Las Vegas. And Dan, is it right in saying that this is the biggest fight of all time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, with the rise of the two fighters, obviously Khabib was quietly simmering for about 15 fights until he kind of hit the UFC. And then, he's become a massive star because he's so ferocious and so dominant. And then Conor McGregor is, the biggest star we've ever had in the sport. And fortunately, they're both in the same weight class. They're very, very different in characters and in fighting styles as well. It's a great match. And it could go either way as well. That's what makes it so exciting.
If you've watched any of the promotional material for UFC 229, the whole bus antics, the fact they took on this bus, which at the time in the UFC's eyes, Dan's, was a disgrace to the sport, it's now a promotional tool.
Yeah, but it's a part of the narrative. We can't avoid that. It's the same situation with John Jones and Cormier when they had that scuffle at the in the lobby of the MGM. That's why we tune in. It's the same thing with Cody and TJ at the weekend. I mean, how many times did we see Cody grab TJ by the throat in the Ultimate Fighter house? Yeah. I mean, that's assault in America. We get away with a lot over here because it's a different kind of culture. But in America, everyone's suing everybody, and there's a lawsuit in there. But the UFC are using it for promotion because, I'll be honest, it makes me want to watch the fight more. I like that drama. I like to see two guys genuinely not like each other. It's good to watch two competitors compete, but it's best to watch two fighters fight.
For people who don't know, Dan, who don't know Khabib Nurmagomedov, just explain what sort of fighter he is, where he's come from, because he really is a Terminator.
He is, yeah. I mean, he's a Dagestani wrestler. He's trained by his father, and he's got a crew of guys around him that are all incredibly strong wrestlers as well. His striking's very unorthodox. He's spent his recent years preparing at AKA. So obviously he's got Cormier and Velasquez and all the other great coaches, Bob Cook, Javier Mendez. There's a lot of knowledge in that gym, and if you've got a raw talent and a strong wrestler like Khabib, trying to turn him into a mixed martial artist, he's a great commodity to play with as a coach. And since he's been in the UFC, I mean, he's not really had to fall back on his striking a great deal. We've seen a couple of knockouts from him, but they were very unorthodox punches. I mean, I've broken them down on inside the octagon. We'll call it the eagle punch or whatever you like, but it's like an uppercut, but his arm is in a position of a hook. It's a very, very strange technique, but it works really well for him, and it sets up his takedowns. And that's ultimately what his game is about. He wants to smash you up against the fence. He ties people's legs up. He triangles his legs around there so they don't have a base, don't have a way out. And then he beats them up. And the most terrifying thing for me about it is that he talks to them while he's doing it. You go back and watch the Michael Johnson fight. He's saying, I need to fight for the title. I deserve this. Mm-hmm. It's very, very unnerving to see that happening. And I can't even imagine what it would be like as an opponent. So he's terrifying. And now because his English is getting better as well, he's even more intriguing because we're starting to get inside his head a bit more and learn about him as an individual. He's got a real character and he's got a lot of personality as well.
Because a bit like Beyonce or Bono, we've just known him by this one name, this Khabib, this Dagestani. So what happens in the fight then? Because you mentioned there, Dan, you mentioned inside the octagon. This is where you break down with John Gooden, you break down the fights, 30 minutes, you can watch them, great detail as well. I'm sure you've had this fight on your mind for a long time because it's been swirling around. How would you see the fight going?
The first thing that we've got to think about is how Conor's going to approach this because he knows Khabib's going to come forward. It's going to be difficult for Conor to push Khabib up against the fence like he has done everybody else. And that's where he usually lines people up for the power left hand. It's going to be different in this one because Khabib's going to push forward no matter what Conor's throwing. He's going to be willing to block. He did the same thing to Edson Barbosa, who's a vicious kicker. And he walked through most of his kicks, knows it's going to hurt, knows he's going to have to weather an early storm, but he also knows that when he gets his hands on someone, he does what he likes. And because he's still unbeaten, it's never been proven any different to him. No one's ever really caught him with a good shot and put him down. I mean, we saw him hurting in the Michael Johnson fight, but Khabib's main vulnerability for me in this fight is that he's got no footwork. He only knows forward. There's no idea of cutting off the octagon until he's actually got his hands on someone. So that's where Conor gets into this fight. He's very intelligent, like Nick said. He's going to be good at circling off and walking Khabib onto that left hand. I think this is going to be a very different version of Conor than we've ever seen. I think we're going to see a lot more lateral movement and more footwork. I think he's going to come in slightly lighter and better conditioned. And I think he's going to expect to be taken down at least a couple of times. But, going back to the point I made earlier, the quick turnaround of this fight to me tells me that he's thinking if he can get Khabib to be mainly focused on his weight cut for the fight and overconfident that he's going to be able to do what he always does, then Conor can predict what he's going to do when he actually gets in there and then set him up. And I think that, weathering an early storm is likely for Conor. I think he's probably going to have to maybe even get out the first round, get back to his feet a couple of times. But I think he'll find a place for that left hand at some point, maybe late second, early third. And I think Khabib will walk onto it. And we've seen him slow down in the Ally Quinter fight. First time we've seen him do 5 rounds. Yep. He did slow down. There were points where you start thinking to yourself, if he was fighting Conor here and there was that sharp left hand in the toolbox, he'd be in trouble.